joined now by a wonderful lady in San Diego via the power of Zoom. Her name is Tamara Goldsby, and she's a research psychologist at the University of San Diego. Tamara, how are you? It's wonderful to have you on here and having a chat with us. How's it going?
Thank you so much. And make sure I pronounce your name right. Is it Ciaran?
It
Ciaran?
is, Kieran. You
Okay,
got it in one.
good.
Yeah, it's
So,
great. I had the pleasure of finding you through LinkedIn. I was a little bit intrigued because um, below what your official title was, you're specializing in sound healing, and this is something as a musician I found very fascinating. And I as a person who's performed in front of people, I do know the power of music. But could you tell me what exactly is sound healing, and also what is a sound bath?
yes, excellent questions all. And so just to let people out there know, I'm a research psychologist with UC San Diego. And my specialty area of research is meditation and especially sound healing. Sound healing is my passion, basically. And it comes from my own personal experience, which I can go into a little bit later. But first, I'll talk a little bit about what sound healing is. Um, and I'd like to first kind of start by saying that you obviously know how incredibly healing music itself can be. I mean, um, I noticed on your website you guys did the song "Dancing in the Streets," and that song is one of those that I think you just can't help but when you hear it feel happy, and I kind of can replay that in my head when I want to like a little lift, something like that, something really uplifting like that. Um, so so music itself is healing, but there's something called sound healing that's actually going at an even deeper level, and we're still trying to understand uh, how it works. And I can go into the theories a little bit later if you'd like. Um, but sound healing basically uses vibrational instruments to affect the mind and body. And it seems to be that vibration that seems to have the biggest impact. And we did a study on it that I wasn't surprised by the results, but I was very happily surprised, I suppose you'd say, that they were so strong. And so that's sound healing itself. Um, and a sound bath is basically when someone goes through the sound healing process. They call it a sound bath because it's like the sounds are washing over you, basically. It's like the vibrations are washing over you. So these are vibrational instruments, and the vibrational instruments entail there's something called a Tibetan or Himalayan singing bowl, and it's a metal bowl, and it looks sort of like a salad bowl. Um, and it's an ancient instrument from Tibet and Nepal, and you tap it or you run the mallet around the edge, and it makes a very distinct sound. Either one is very distinct. And there's a vibration that comes off of it. And you can actually feel this vibration. It's very powerful. Um, and so that's one of the main instruments of sound bath. Another instrument is the crystal singing bowl, which is the same idea. It's a bowl, but it's made from quartz crystal, or sometimes it's made from different kinds of crystals like rose quartz crystal. And that again is tapped, or you run the mallet around the edge, and that creates a very different, distinct sound and vibration. Another very common instrument in sound bath is the gong, and I'm sure you're familiar with gongs. Those have incredibly powerful vibration coming off of them. And I personally own all of these instruments myself because I'm very in tune with this whole process and its effects. So the sound bath, they call it a bath because the vibration kind of washes over you. Um,
Fantastic. Now,
yeah.
what I remember hearing a quote. I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something like it was from Tesla, the original Tesla, not the car.
Yeah,
And he said something like, if you want to understand the powers of the universe or something like that, you have to think of it in frequencies. Now,
frequencies. Yeah.
and so have had the pleasure a few years ago of being in a room with one of these Himalayan, in fact, two or three of these Himalayan bulls, and this lady was a healer, and it was a wonderful experience. I understand with the frequency from one bull was crossing over into the frequency in the other bull, and literally I could feel my head was resonating, my very skull was resonating, and I now with regards to the actual movement, it was I could obviously then the parts of my body are moving, resonating with these frequencies.
Yeah. Yeah.
In your studies, I know this is early stages of this, and it's very very hard to um, pin down. But what outcomes have you found in the as in the healing powers of this frequency, literally moving the very atoms in our body?
So over a decade ago, maybe 12, 13 years ago, I was at an outside market in San Diego, North County beach area. And I came across this gentleman. His name is Deep Dioja. He's from Nepal. And he looks kind of like a monk, basically. He looks like a monk. And he had these weird metal bowls with him, and he tapped them in front of me. And I just went, whoa. It was the vibration off of it was so powerful. I didn't know what to do with that. And he said, I have these meditations where I play all of these bowls. People lie down on the ground and we play all of these. And something inside me said, you have to go to this. And so I started attending these sound healing meditations, these sound baths. And he would hold them every week for quite a long time. And I would not miss one
Mm.
because the effect was so powerful. And not just on myself, but I could see kind of anecdotally, I could see people around me got so relaxed from this and felt, you could just see their face just, afterwards. Um, and at a certain point, towards the beginning of my going to these, he said, Deep said, you're a research psychologist. Why don't you study this? And I wasn't ready at that point. I just wasn't ready at that point. But then a few years later, it just became inevitable for me because I was so drawn to this and saw such incredible effects with people that have gone to it that I had to study it. There was just no doubting it. And everybody around me was saying, you have to study this. And so I started studying it. And that's when we saw these incredible results. So we studied people, we studied 62 participants, and they were at 3 different venues. And we looked at their mood, their tension, their anxiety, depression, anger, all these things. And the strongest results were in tension and anxiety. And then there were very strong results as well in depression and anger. The reductions were incredible after a sound bath. And we also measured, we looked at a couple other factors too, which made it really interesting. We looked at spirituality, and we found that people had an increased spiritual well-being after these sound baths as well. It was very, very interesting.
Wow.
Really, really cool stuff. And then we also looked at physical pain. We measured people's physical pain afterwards, and we found that their physical pain was reduced as well.
Wow.
So the possibilities of this modality are pretty wide reaching, and that's why we want to of course, study it more, and we want to go into the physiological aspects of it. So we measured it by questionnaires on the first study, but we're working on getting funding for a physiological study where we look at their blood pressure, their heart rate, blood biomarkers of stress, such as cortisol. We also have a colleague at U.C.S.D. who has a device that we could look at EEG and EKG. So we could look at their brain waves and their heart waves and to see how they sync. So there's just so many possibilities out there that it's pretty
Well,
exciting.
I find it quite fascinating that something is well. This is not a new. It's new to the Western world, but this is something that's been used for centuries
Yeah,
in places like Nepal,
yeah,
where they've obviously known that this has been a beneficial. Obviously, there's a spiritual element to these bowls as well, where there's a connecting to spirituality, meditation, and connecting to something on a higher level. I know there's that element to these bowls, but definitely the interesting thing is physically, apart from mentally, all the things you're talking about: depression reduction, anger reducing, stress
mhm,
reducing, just by being experiencing the frequencies of these bowls. But then the physical side of it as well, where we're all connected, as I suppose the mental and the physical, but the actual pain reduction in the body from using, that's unbelievably fascinating. So
yeah.
what do you think's happening to in the body on a physical side? Obviously the stress levels are being reduced. We're zoning, we're connecting to the frequency, and we're zoning into that, or it's zoning into us. There's a definite something happening there. But what do you think's happening on a physical level when we're
Well,
experienced in these sound baths?
yeah, this is a really good question, and this is what there's a lot of theories out there. So let me give you kind of the major theories about what's happening. Um, the major theories involve one of them is called binaural beats, um, and you may be familiar with that. That's where you put two different frequencies on either side of the ear, and the brain entrains. So, for instance, if you have a frequency of 20 hertz on this ear and a frequency of 25 hertz on this ear, the brain entrains to 5, the difference between the two, 5 hertz. Um, and that's with that entraining comes a change in the brain waves. Um, so that's another theory, is that it's about the brain waves are changing to a deeper level of brainwave state. So going from an alpha to a delta kind of thing. Um, and so those are a couple of the theories. Another possible theory, and it could be some combination of all of these, we don't know. Another possible theory is that the body has an energetic field around it called a biofield, and that these are waves. And because the body is made up of energy, there's energy waves coming off the bowls, that these energy sound waves are bouncing in and out of the energy field and affecting the energy field of the body. So that's another theory.
Now,
And,
could I
yeah,
ask you about back to that Tesla quote that I mentioned earlier on, and frequencies? If you want to understand the universe, yeah, I think the quote was something. If you want to understand the powers of the universe, you better start looking at frequencies, or that's the gist of the
yeah,
quote, which is wonderful. As a musician, I've always found that fascinating because I literally see music affecting people when I'm standing on stage singing. This
yeah,
is slightly different though, where you have these instruments that are ancient, that have been designed over centuries, that they literally resonate when you're running the pad around them, and or even you just tap them and they resonate, whether it's the gong or the bowl. So this resonate, this frequency that they resonate, uh, and then do you think that literally the atoms that's in the body are resonating, or are in tune with, are they tuning to the, like we're as our body's always almost becoming like an instrument and tuning to the bowl?
yeah. And this is a fascinating thing that you're proposing, because if you think of the entire as everything is energy, made up of energy, which has atoms moving around and interacting, this could very well be happening. Um, we we need to study it more to try to characterize what's happening. Um, and it's such a new field. That's one of the exciting things is we're getting in on such a new field. There's so much more work to be done and so much more to look at.
Are
And one
you
of the things,
are you out on your own working on this with your team there in San Diego? Are there other studies going across the world? Are you working or talking to any other sort of research people?
um, there are a few other people that have started doing studies since I did my first study, but there needs to be more scientific rigor involved. I'm not collaborating per se with them. I have kind of my own team of people that I'm working with, but um, and part of it is that we need to bring this out to people. Um, that's one of the exciting things that you're bringing it out to companies. One of our goals is to not only research it, but to bring it out to communities, bring it as a healing modality, doing what could be called a demonstration project, where we measure it, but we're also helping people in the meantime. Bring it out to communities and bring it out to companies. When people are stressed out at work, the office environment can be a very stressful place. So that's part of what we want to do as well, is not just the research, but to bring it to people and to teach people how to do it. And part of what we want to also nail down is this whole idea of the frequency difference. If there are certain levels of frequencies that are more healing than others, that's what we want to find out. And that can be used as a healing modality, because that's what we're here to do, is to help people and help them heal. So,
Well, yeah, that's interesting. You're talking about specific frequencies. So we could see a time in the future, possibly with more research, and you find out that that specific frequency is in tune. Well, maybe not every human being's exactly the same, but in that sort of frequency response, give or take two or three different frequencies at the top end,
mm-hmm.
uh, that might be, well, in a way, it's a bit like what in the religious world, where they talk about the chakras, where the
Yeah.
seven chakras through
Mm-hmm.
the body. So is that what they believe in Tibet and in the faith and the spiritual side of things, that the chakra is tuned to different frequencies? Is that what they believe?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, um, certain crystal bowls, you can make crystal bowls more exact than the Tibetan bowls, and certain crystal bowls are made to be attuned to specific chakras in the body, um, according to their frequency. So frequency is definitely an area that, in fact, there's theories out there that specific frequencies affect certain illnesses and certain mental health issues and things like that. So this is a whole other area that we would definitely want to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, I find this fascinating. I've obviously been involved, like I said to you at the start of this conversation, in music a long time, and I can see the physical and emotional benefits. One, as a musician myself, I understand the health benefits, because there's many times I'm down or tired, exhausted, and I walk on stage and I'm like, I really don't want to do this. I'm tired tonight. And then I start singing, and I start, you're maybe on stage with the band, or you can hear the music coming out, and you, within a very short period of time, I start to feel better. And definitely as I'm walking off the stage, I'm in a better headspace. I'm in a better place, feeling better than where I started. But I also noticed then the reaction. It's one thing performing it, and it's a whole different experience. But just particularly live music, we obviously are social creatures, and music is such a primitive, um, primal thing that's in it's literally in our DNA. We have a heartbeat,
Yeah.
and we were in their mother's womb. You were hearing that beat continually, and it's no one thing that always blew my mind when I started getting into music at the start. I remember a music teacher saying that it's no coincidence that a lot of songs are written around the 120 beat per minute, because the heart, it's all in tune with the in time, either with the heartbeat of our mum or our own heartbeats, or even the walking pace. We walk at sort of 60 beats per minute, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
twice as the song is. So it's very, very interesting with those beats, but the beats is one thing, but the frequencies of notes and tuning these frequencies of notes, this is where it really gets interesting. And the work that you're doing, I find unbelievably fascinating. Now, these ancient religious people in places like Nepal that were using these bowls and spending a lot of time over centuries perfecting these sort of experiences with the frequencies. This is pretty new in the Western world. Do you find there's a bit of a pushback because there's a religious connotation to this, that it's sort of like a hippy dippy, uh, you know, oh, that's what the weirdos are doing up in the hills of California or whatever. Is there any pushback from the medical world? How are you finding this being accepted in the real world?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Karen, because I have my foot in both worlds. um, I have, my training and my education in psychology, and I also, am a regular practitioner of yoga and sound healing. So I understand both sides. And it's the thing is, we try to separate science from spirituality. Um, in reality, why do we have to do that? And there's also a difference between religion and spirituality. Active religion, being part of a religion, versus being spiritual is a whole other ball game. Um, so part of what we're doing with this with the science of it is trying to prove that this is a real thing. It's not a hippy dippy thing, as people say, and that it's actually a real thing. And that's where the science comes in. That's why we want to do all these physiological measurements, measuring the blood pressure and the EEG and EKG and all this, so that we can prove that this is a real thing. This is actually healing people,
Yeah.
um, on a
I
physical.
find it fascinating, and I find it very exciting, because I think that, well, I know the power of music, like I said to you, but I think you guys are getting down to the nitty gritty of the specifics of finding out what frequencies affect how. So, for instance, in the future, we could have circumstances where in the future where you do find the perfect frequency for migraines, or specific health problems, digestive problems or whatever. So lower frequencies to
Yeah.
specific parts of the body, or working on that area of the body. Do you think this is something that can happen in the not so distant future? You will be able to specifically train, or have the information there to prove the proof to go, if you are exposed to this for 1 hour a day, you will be better in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 2 months, or this is beneficial to your health.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very possible. Um, and that really it comes down to proving it, basically. Um, but while we're proving it, we also want to still keep bringing this healing to people, because anecdotally we can see the effects on people. You go to a sound bath and you can see how different people are afterwards. Um, but yes, the goal is to really prove it in science. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I wish you the best of luck with it. You so you've been studying. I, how long have you been doing this? Remind me again, how long has this been, this research began? 10 years, did you say?
Well, I started attending sound baths about 12, 13 years ago. And then I started the study, it was about 2014, I think, it's something like that. Um, but one of the challenges with research is getting funding for the studies. So that's what we're working on right now is getting funding for our next studies. But we also, besides the studying of it, we also want to bring it out to people, to the public, bring the
Yeah,
healing to the
yeah. I
public.
think I think sometimes you just have to sort of get people to experience these things because it's quite a unique experience. I remember being very moved in the room. It's very hard to describe unless you experience being in the
Right.
room with two or three of these bowls, and you're hearing a frequency that's literally your skull is resonating, or you can feel it in your body because it's movement, the air is moving. And
Yeah.
then there's these cross, the wonderful thing is when you start getting the two frequencies starting to cross over each other, so they're and 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 that's where the real sort of almost tension starts to happen. You can feel like the two of them fighting each other, the resonance of your body with these two frequencies, and one's getting louder as the other one's dripping off, and it's an unbelievable. There's nothing like, I've never experienced anything else like it in my day. And I've traveled and I've saw a lot of things. It's a wonderful experience, and I've genuinely felt um, physically and emotionally better after probably, I don't know, it probably lasted a 30, 40, maybe 45 minutes.
Uh-huh.
um, it's a wonderful thing. I wish you all the best with it, Tamara, and I hope that maybe in the future when coronavirus allows us to travel again, that maybe in California, if I'm in San Diego, we could maybe meet
Yes,
and talk further about this, and if I
I
can
would.
be involved in some form of presentation, getting people in a room with the bowls, singing, music, whatever.
Yes,
I would
yeah,
love to do something with you.
yeah. I would love to be involved with what you're doing. I mean, bringing it to companies. The the effect of music, even music itself, is so healing. So I would love to be involved in some of
Would you be
that.
up for if look at one of the obviously with COVID, the biggest in the corporate event space which we operate in, COVID's preventing, and no company's going to put their people, their staff in a room while this is all going on. So this is
Yeah,
one of the massive challenges we're facing as a thing. But in an ideal scenario in the future, when COVID goes away and we can get in rooms together,
yeah,
I think this is something that uh, definitely a lot of the people that are working in the corporate world are suffering from a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, deadlines,
yeah,
chasing whatever it is they're chasing, and
absolutely.
um, this is a wonderful way to uh, almost reset. It definitely has a form, a connection to meditation as well.
Mhm.
Can you tell me before we go, explain a little bit as well with regards to the connection and meditation? Um, are they all coming from the same spiritual side? The meditation, the healing from sound, the yoga, um, are they all? They're all in my. I'm a novice to this world. I was brought up in Ireland. This is a long way from Nepal, but give me a little bit of the connection and how they're tied, the history, or I know you've been involved in this world for quite some time.
Um, yeah, that's a good question. Um, they kind of overlap a bit, I would say. You don't you can have a sound bath without actually having a meditation. Some people integrate a meditation like a visualization during a sound bath, and some people bring in sound bowls, singing bowls to yoga classes as well. So there's a lot of overlap, because there's healing in different ways, and different types of modalities appeal to different people too. So that's why it's good to have a number of different modalities. Um, but there's, one great thing about the sound baths is, it's low technology, it's low tech, it's inexpensive, relatively inexpensive. You can bring your sound bowls to a yoga studio. You can bring them to a company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's easy to do. It doesn't take any training.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would, if people are watching, I would suggest that they give it a try. That's, I think, the best way to do it is just to give it a try. With coronavirus, it's kind of challenging depending on where they're at and what's being offered. There are some offered virtually, and it's not the same experience. It's relaxing, but it's not the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
But when they can and to the best of their ability, I would give it a try on their own, because yeah, it is, as you said, something that has to be experienced.
Mm. Yeah, it's an unbelievably unique experience.
It
Um,
is. It's,
last question. In your studies and where this is going, and obviously I can tell you're very, very passionate about this project, and it's something it's a new to the Western world, and you're trying to find and fine tune the and in your research as to the huge benefits that this can have for the human body and the mind. Um,
yeah.
do you see this something with the world that we're now living in? Do you see this something catching on in the Western world?
It's interesting because before COVID hit, it seemed like it was really almost snowballing, like gaining so much momentum, sound healing and the interest in it, because people were experiencing it more and more and experiencing the effects. And I think after COVID slows down and ends, this will again really build up a lot of momentum, because people are experiencing the effects, and the effects are, as you said, so unique and so hard to describe, but so powerful, that I think it will continue in a big way to gain momentum. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, how much, if someone was at home, like a lot of people on the planet right now are in lockdown, um, and they're home either by themselves or with their partners or family, how much is it to buy a sound bowl?
That's a great question. It really depends. They can range anywhere from a tiny little bowl that doesn't really do much, it's more decorative, all the way up to a giant bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, you can get them online for maybe, um, well, I'd say a good sized one, I would say $150, $200 maybe, US dollars. I'm not sure how that converts to Australian, but yeah, it really depends on your quality too, what you're getting. So I would say tell people to be cautious, because there are some people that tout them as what they have um, as ancient kind of antique bowls,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently what some people that are not great are doing is they bury them in dirt and try to antique them, make them look antique when they're not actually antique. So I wouldn't go for something like that unless you really trust the person selling it. But do your research and research the company that's selling them, because you can. That's one good thing is you can do them yourself. Um, I have several of my own bowls, Tibetan bowls. I have a crystal bowl. I have gongs. So it's something you can do at home.
Mm.
So yeah, I would definitely encourage people to try it out.
Wonderful. Well, Tamara, I thank you very much for your time. I
Okay.
look forward to when COVID is over and I get a chance to be back in California. I look forward to meeting you. Hopefully, if I'm in
You
San
as well.
Diego, I'll certainly come and say hello.
Yes,
Uh,
I would love that.
and maybe With regards to going forward, I think one, I'd love to do something experience or do a collaboration of some kind, and maybe we could do a when things open up again and we can get people in rooms, do something of a bit of a showcase, and we can co-promote and
That would be
experience it.
awesome.
That would be good. I think there's a need for this. I'm really excited about the work you're doing, and I think that in the current world where anxiety and stress just seems to be on a whole different level in the last 12 months. I think now more than ever, we need as a society to look to things like what the work you're doing, and having, sound baths and sound healing sessions, and anything that can lower stress, anxiety, and make people have a better day and have no side effects. It's not a pill you're
Yeah,
taking. That's the one beautiful thing about music in general. It's like a drug that has not no only positive side
only
effects.
positive. I know it's a win-win situation. It's not like taking a pill from the doctor that may have some side effects. Music and sound healing, they don't have side effects that we're aware of. This is really positive stuff. Yeah.